So the title of this one, Old Tests No Good? ? Hey guys, I'm curious about what your opinions are concerning practice tests. I feel like I've seen the majority of questions either through practice or on prep test past prep test 50. Okay. I'm taking the test in November and not sure if I should dive deeper into the test before 50 or if I should focus on tests more recently. Are there disadvantages to looking at tests that have happened over 10 years ago before the November test? Should I just focus on tests 70 to 89 again and get familiar with more recent tests? I think I'm going to sign up for the demon as well. Love the podcast. F. I would definitely value a test you haven't seen before over a recent one. I don't know.
Especially the logic games. I mean, tests 40 through 50 have very predictable logic games that are totally indicative of the type of stuff that you're very likely to see now. The logical reasoning is not really any different. I'm looking at Ben in the Google Doc right now. Ben is counting the number of spaces between the sentences. And that's because there was clearly 3 spaces in one of the spots. There was clearly 3 spaces, which I noticed as well. Ben, did you notice this though over here?
There's one, yeah.
There's one.
So if you have 1, 2, and 3 spaces after your sentences.
Yeah. I would for sure, definitely do tests 40 through 50.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's even anything wrong with tests 1 through 40. As we've been fleshing out explanations for those, we've run across I've been doing those questions a lot in the last year or so. And they are totally predictable using the strategies that I mostly used on on prep tests 40 through 60. That's where I learned the LSAT really was 40 through 60, right? And then I was a professional LSAT teacher, 60 through 89. And now we're going back in time doing 1 through 40 just to make sure that we have full explanations for all of those. And they do not seem different in meaningful ways. That's actually maybe an interesting conversation we could have. Let's go back and forth. I'm going to say one way that the earlier tests are different. And then you say one way that the earlier tests are different. Let's see how many we can come up with.
Okay, sure.
Is that a fun game?
Okay. It's so fun. Yeah.
All right.
Let's do that for the rest of the show.
Okay. They used to have, on logical reasoning, they used to have one passage and then 2 questions following that one passage.
Yeah.
And that's something that has gone away.
That stopped in test 39, by the way. Random trivia for you.
Everybody loves that, by the way. There's no reason why they don't have that anymore. I mean, I don't understand why they don't have that anymore.
Yeah, because you can get 2 birds with 1 stone, you're saying?
Well, if they wanted, they could get 5 birds with 1 stone. It would be so easy to write one passage and then ask main conclusion, strengthen, necessary assumption, must be true. They could ask, and they could totally ask 5 different questions. I don't know why they don't. They're making more work for themselves. Anyway, that's the thing that you'll see when you go through those older tests. But the questions themselves, though, aren't any different at all. It's just that you recycled the same passage for 2 questions.
Yeah.
What else is different about the older tests?
Okay. I got another one. This is good, actually. I hadn't thought of these things until we started talking about them.
Okay.
So one obvious difference is that starting with the June 2007 test, which came between tests 51 and 52, is you got comparative reading. So one of the 4 passages in reading comp has 2 passages, shorter passages, and you have to compare the 2. That did not exist before the June 2007 LSAT.
Okay, correct. Comparative reading. So yeah, when you practice the older tests, you won't see any comparative reading. but whatever, the passages that are there are exactly like the passages that are, I mean, 3 out of 4 passages on the modern test are not comparative reading. So you're still getting a lot of value out of studying the old reading comp. Okay, here's one for you, Ben. There is a lot more weird, gendered, heteronormative, and in some cases, misogynistic stuff on the older tests. There's just weird, like you'll have logic games where, you know, it's always one boy and one girl at the dance, that type of shit. It's
Yep.
always
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
couples
The
at
married
dinner
couples. Yep.
with a
Mm-hmm.
man and a wife.
Mm-hmm.
The there are even some, yeah, there's definitely some, it's very straight and it's very gendered. And as I go through these old logical reasoning questions, especially, I always point out to the class, like, well, here's something that they would never say on the modern test, and here's something that they
Yep.
would never say on the modern test.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good that they don't. I mean, it's just, it's just, you know, it's just an archaic, like old way of thinking, old way of being. And the LSAT has definitely adapted to that now. They, marriage is no longer between a man and a woman on the LSAT, thankfully.
Yeah.
All
Now
right.
it's only between a man and a man and a woman and a woman.
It's not that either. Now they just don't say anything at all
They're just
because they
like, we're
know,
not going to talk about it. We don't want to
well,
go
yeah,
down that road.
they know they're going to put their foot in it if they say anything. So they don't
Yeah.
do that anymore. Yeah. Any other
Okay.
differences? I can think
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
one more, but your turn.
I got more. I got more for you. Okay. So
Oh
another
shit, I'm
one
going to lose
is,
the game.
um, I hope I'm right about this actually now. We got to keep score. Games with actual drawings around the rules, like images in the drawing.
Oh, there used to be a lot of maps and stuff, huh? Like the ski
Mhm.
chalets one, and what other ones? There aren't that many where
No,
there
there's
was like
only like three
a
or
picture.
actually there's only three, and I can tell you which tests they are because we've had to work around them in the demon. But
Yeah,
yeah, they actually provided an image for you as opposed to just inviting you to come up with the image in your own head.
right. Okay, so yeah, they don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, uh, the logic games on those older tests, the games on tests 1 through 40
Mm-hmm.
are harder than the games on tests 40 through 89 on
Okay.
average. The
Okay.
games used to be a lot harder. There just were more variables, more rules, more dimensions, right? It would be like, oh, we're picking um, whatever, you know, this isn't that hard of a game, but we're picking foods for a buffet. Not only are we picking 5 out of 9, but we're also picking at least one entree or main dish, at least one side dish, at least one dessert. Oh, and not only that, but we have to also have at least one hot dish, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that dimension goes across the entree or main side dessert dimension. And so it's just this
Mm-hmm.
a multi-dimensional game where you're thinking about, it's not just let's put 6 things in order.
Yeah.
Also, it's not just let's put 6 things in order. Even when it is just put things in order, it would be like let's put 9 things in order instead
Yeah.
of let's put 6 things in order.
Yeah.
So those
You have a
older
lot longer
games,
list. Yeah.
they're awesome to study because it's the equivalent of wearing a weighted vest when you go out for your run or hike or whatever, right? It's a it's a it's a workout. It's a do harder stuff so that the modern stuff seems easier.
Totally. Hey, that just made me think. One game that I remember always taking a decent amount of time, despite my familiarity with it and whatnot. But I'm curious because I haven't done it in ages. So I wonder now if like we did it with Worlds, it'd just be like super easy. Have you done the new and used CDs game recently?
That game is my personal least favorite logic game out of all of them. I'm talking about 360
Yeah.
games. That's my least favorite one. I have done it fairly recently. One of the things we did in the Demon is we had game night,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where everybody like brought a cocktail and we did games on together.
Yeah.
Everybody was allowed to bring whatever game they want and stump Nathan. Um, and of course, that's one of the games that we did was the new and used CDs game.
Yeah.
It is much better to do it with worlds,
Hmm.
much better.
Hmm.
The problem, of course, with that game is that it has compound sufficient conditions and it has disjunctive necessary conditions. And when you
And a lot of
start
variables. You got 10 variables
10 variables,
at the end of the
although one
day.
of them
Yeah.
is just in, so it's really 9 variables. But
Okay.
um,
Sure.
when you start drawing out those rules, it is such a disaster. I mean, it's the
Mm-hmm.
poster child for why you should just make worlds instead of doing all the old school if then arrows and
And I
linking
I
stuff
did that. I
together.
don't know if you've seen my
Dude,
video for it,
oh,
but I
mine, I
wrote a
have old
whole.
videos. No. If you want to see, America's Funniest Home Videos version of like LSAT bloopers, watch some of our old videos where we use those outdated techniques. Now, we continually update all those videos in the Demon. As we continue to teach classes, you'll see new videos coming in where we do the games in a more sensible way. And yeah, that for that game, for sure, pick one of the players, split it. Well, this is either on sale or not.
Yeah.
And
For
when it's
sure.
on sale, here's what happens. And when it's not on sale, here's what happens. But that game, you do have to split and split and split and split. And you end up with
Mm.
like, 5 or 6 different templates, depending
Still,
on
that's not
how
bad.
you
That's
split.
not
No,
bad for that game.
or maybe it's 8, maybe it's 7 or 8. But so it still is a mess. I mean, it still is like, holy shit, there's a lot going on here.
Mm.
But the purpose of making worlds is to eliminate rules.
Yeah.
And you do get to eliminate all of the rules by making worlds. You get to eliminate all of those pain in the ass conditional rules. And then you're just left with, well, there's this solution and this solution and this solution. And in this solution, there's a few wild cards. And here there's a couple wild cards. But other than that, there's no more rules that you have to keep processing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is, yes, a lot easier to do that game with worlds.
Cool.
Anyway, other differences?
Yeah, I got some more for you. So you were saying that the games are harder between 1 and 40 than
Yes.
say 41 to 89, right? I would say that the reading comp is easier. When I do reading comp challenges or passages from these older tests, I feel like more often than not, I'm going through and eliminating the 4 answer choices because they just seem radically different from the passage, not just slightly different. Like I feel like in the more recent years, the answer choices have gotten closer and closer together, which makes them harder to separate. Obviously, you still can, but that's my sense with reading comp.
Okay. Well, I'm tapping out. So the game is tied because I went first. So if you can come up with one more, then you win the game.
Okay. I got 2 more.
Damn.
They're stupid technical things that are, not worth talking about. But
Oh.
I'll, for the sake of victory, I'll still do it.
Okay.
The one is that in the games, very early games, they actually used variables that mimicked the answer choices. So some games used the letters A, B, C, D, E, and so on,
Oh, yeah.
which they stopped doing, obviously, because of the potential confusion. But
Okay.
that's one difference.
That is a difference, yeah.
One other difference, which is, again, technical and not that important, but starting with the digital content now in Law Hub, the section numbers have changed. But although I guess that's not really an old test thing, it's just a new formatting change, but it applies to all the older tests as well. So I guess that doesn't count. Anyways, so before, like we had like section 2 was LR and then it would be different for a different test. Now in Law Hub, it's always the same. So section 1 is always, I think, reading comp maybe, or games. Sections 2 and 3 are always logical reasoning, and section 4, I think, is reading comp.
Really?
Yeah, it's a weird. I don't know why they decided to do that, but it creates confusion because sometimes people ask for an explanation from section 3 of test
Section 3,
83,
right.
and it's like, wait, are you talking about Law Hub, or are you talking about what LSAC has published in print? Because
Well,
those are different.
Laha also put all of the redacted questions back onto the tests.
Crazy. What,
So
24 questions or something like that? Yeah, I don't know.
all the questions that had been redacted over time, all of the ones that had in all the tests we ever saw, it always said item removed from scoring. And then suddenly when they launched Law Hub, they just put all those questions back on their own tests. High security operation they got going over there.
Yeah.
All right. You win the game, and thank you, F, for writing in about the old tests. Our
Yeah.
advice is, yes, you can absolutely do those old tests. You should probably work your way backward. I mean, the more modern test, the better. But if it's a new test that you haven't seen before, I mean,
Yeah.
they're like, particularly logic games, there is shit in those tests. There are games that I would imagine are exactly like the games that you're going to see on the modern test.
Yeah.
Probably not as hard. Like the super hard ones, you're probably not going to see ones that look like that.
Oh,
But
speaking, this is a random tangent,
yeah,
but you know that game, shoot. I think I don't remember what it's about now, but G can either be in the middle column or out. And there's a morning and afternoon. I think it's like student presentations or something like that.
okay.
And you'll remember the game if I tell you this rule. If N goes on Monday, then H and I have to go on Tuesday. And if
Oh,
N goes on Tuesday,
you're talking about there's two possibilities. It's either the bus game,
not the bus game. That's
okay,
different. Yeah.
or it's the advertisements in the magazine game.
No, sorry. This is
Hmm.
it's I'm pretty sure, well, there's 8 people. I think it's 8 students, and they're giving presentations. And anyways, the point is there's this rule that if N goes on Monday, then H and I have to go on Tuesday, and if N goes on Tuesday, then H and I have to go on
Oh
Wednesday.
yeah, okay, now I got it. Yeah.
And then, like, it doesn't, there's nothing matters if N goes on Wednesday, right? It only
Right.
applies if N is on
That's
Monday
right.
and
Or
Tuesday.
N can be out. Yes. Okay, got it.
Or N can
Yes.
be an out, right? And then there's like this other rule that O and R have to be in the morning, which, at least in my
Right.
diagrams on the top row and so on. Okay, so the reason I'm talking about this is that there's another game. I can't remember what that game is about either, but when you end up drawing the rules, the diagram is exactly the same.
Hmm.
And when I look at those two games, even though the subject matter is totally different, the diagrams end up being the same. I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if LSAC scrambled, like one of their games didn't work out, and they're like, okay, just grab this other
At the
game.
last minute, they needed one.
Yeah, we'll change the subject, totally different people, totally different variables, but at the end of the day, the rules were exactly the same, just because they're so strikingly similar, right? If N is on Monday, then
Yeah.
H and I are on Tuesday. It was like if T is on the first day, then F and G are on the second day, and so on.
There's another one. There's another pair like that is extremely similar. I think it's the trains going like through cycling through stations. And then there's the one where it's like tribes and they're cycling through a festival. And it's like,
Oh yeah,
and they're like almost like identical. It's
yeah.
like 5 trains making 3 stops through the same stations. And then it's like
Mm-hmm.
5 tribes, each doing 3 participations in a festival. It's
Yeah,
like 15 total things on either side, and they're like almost identical. The point is for students, the point is the more games you can do, the better, because
yeah,
they do repeat themselves. If you do all of the games from prep test 1 through 89,
Yeah.
plus A, B, C, and J. If you do
Yeah.
all of those, you will for sure see stuff on whatever test you take officially. You will for
Hmm.
sure see echoes of all of that practice. Um, I say it all the time, but the LSAT is a test of how hard you can work, especially on the logic games,
Yeah.
because the harder you work, the more experience you have, the more familiar the new tests start to look to you, and you just totally get rewarded for that.
Hmm.
So
Cool.
F, good job doing prep tests 50 through 89. If you're still studying, I wouldn't redo tests 70 through 89. I would get more coverage. Start with the 40s and then do the 30s and then do the 20s probably.
And for anybody who's worried, it's still okay to repeat tests. I'd prefer to do a new test that
Right.
you haven't seen before, but if you have not scored 180 on a test, you can still learn something from it. Figure out why you can't get a perfect score on something you've seen before and reviewed.
Yeah, we're not big on saving tests. I don't really care. It's not about diagnostics. At a certain point, if you've already done 40 or 50 tests, I'm not really very interested in your diagnostic tests anymore. It's probably time for you to take the official test at that point. Um, More coverage is always better. So, yeah, if you've done all of the tests, good for you. You can keep studying. You can start over from the beginning or whatever, and your diagnostic scores are going to be slightly skewed by the fact that you've seen those tests before. But as Ben said, you're still going to be learning from those tests, and that's really the point. The point
That's
isn't
all that
the
matters. Yeah.
diagnostics. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
um,
Next one.
okay.